Thank you for the opportunity to present today. We just had a very short presentation. It's also being handed out to you in the print form so you can see it more closely. The project we want to talk about is the adaptive reuse of the old Woolworth building at 822, 824 LaSalle Street at the corner of Jackson Street. And it's a old retail building built in 1961. Has a nice street front on LaSalle Street, but on Jackson Street it has a 152-foot long brick wall, which fortunately the Ottawa Mural Committee and the Brush with History covered over with a wonderful mural for a good number of years. So there wasn't as ugly. And so that was certainly appreciated. But the time has come now for us to renovate this building and for an active use that will activate LaSalle Street more, activate Jackson Street and the historic Washington Park more, and create an attraction for downtown Ottawa that will bring more people here, that will bring more revenue, tax revenues to the city, and bring more business to other local businesses, increase sales tax, and to increase other spending in the community. So what we have come up with is a multi-use building, and we're going to share with you a little bit about that. We're going to take a little bit back on a history tour a few years ago for some planning that the city did, the citizens of the community did, with some ideas that were discussed at that time, and hoping we can resurrect a lot of those ideas. If not all at once, certainly over time. And so we want to share with you what our thinking is and get your input on it. So the view here is from Columbus Street on Jackson Street looking west. And the Woolworth building is the lowest one-story building hidden behind this gigantic trellis. And then there's pedestrian activity, there's a splash pad in the street. There's the park that is currently our parking lot is repaved and used for marketplace, farmers market, consumer market, and the like. And Washington Square Park is to the right with all the trees. And so a lot of planning has been done on the project. Back in 2017, the city hired Wolf Landscape, and I think we shared that expense for architecture for sharing the street, which just included at that stage just expanding the sidewalk next to the Woolworth building, which in this case is down here. The Woolworth building's right here. And so this is LaSalle Street, Jackson Street, that parking lot that's over there, and Columbus Street would be right over here. So this is the park on the north side with the angled parking. And so this proposal was, let's expand the sidewalk so that you can have outdoor dining, have trees and landscape for shade, and pave the street so that it's more suitable for events, a much more elevated appearance for the street. And the city also around the same time frame, so right after that, was concerned about giving up parking spaces to the city, and we jointly funded a parking study. And the parking study, in a nutshell, is that the busiest times of the week, on Tuesday morning when courts in session, which doesn't apply anymore because they're doing so much virtually, and on Friday night when all the restaurants and the bars are open and people are out and about at the concert and the like, we are using half of our parking inventory in downtown Ottawa. So there's plenty of parking to be had, and so I think we want more activity and an appropriate amount of parking as opposed to more parking. And so that was the upshot of that study. I can't even read those things up there, so you have it in front of you, you can read them and read. That's the findings that it was at on the study. In a nutshell, there's plenty of parking in the eight blocks or so surrounding area around Washington Square and the Woolworth building. So our planning idea workshops were held by the city with White and Company as the consultant back in 2018. And this set the framework for things that would be beneficial for downtown Ottawa and this block. And one was to have the park, Washington Square Park, a beautiful amenity. We have commercial buildings, retail stores, and the like, all the way around it. But we wanted to create a street in the middle, which is kind of a barrier from the park to the downtown. because it's two lanes of angled parking and a street, one-way street. And the idea is to create this plaza in between the two to help create activity between the park and the city itself. And this is another image showing the park in the foreground, the Woolworth building with a lot of new openings on the side over there, and a lot of public uses, streetscape improvements on that area. Here's some pictures of the people meeting, very well attended meetings, and a lot of community participation and input. So they took, the city has all these documents on file, basically in downtown Ottawa, and people identified in their little sticky circles what they liked and what they didn't like. So it was really helpful. We still have the same community and a few new folks since then. So some of the ideas that were brought up are depicted here. Splash pad, places for the kids and families to play, converting or adding to the streetscape. There's that kind of amenity for that area. Outdoor play, places to gather, which can also function as small event spaces, bandstands, and the like. And then this image right here, which is a winter image, looking again on Jackson Street to the west. Possibility of an ice skating rink in the wintertime, temporary or permanent, so that people do a lot of activity downtown. The idea of creating a screen along the Carson and Woolworth buildings that we own to project images that are significant for the local community, but also to project movies. So you could do ice skating and watch It's a Wonderful Life on the screen simultaneously. That kind of really unique events that will bring people downtown and get them to spend money and increase the tax base. So we had a few suggestions for minimal things to get started. And really, we think the big picture is what we would like you to adopt as your own. It doesn't have to be that particular one, but it's those kinds of elements that will bring things downtown. And it may take some time based on funding, but we think we should make those small plans. We should make big plans so that people are attracted to them, and not only people with money are attracted to those things, and that would be helpful. Immediately, we'd like to have Jackson Street a flexible space for both parking and events, so that you can do both of those things. It might start with something as simple as pavers and having curbless curbs, so that it's safe for people to walk across from the park to the building and the building to the park, so they're not tripping on things. Street trees, landscape would be very important. It's very simple things could be like string lights across from the park to the Woolworth building, so you create this wonderful outdoor dining experience for the users of the space. On the Woolworth building, we're proposing on the north side, facing the park, these 4 large glass wall doors. So basically, they would open up, creating a pavilion on the park, like some of these images are showing, where there's a lot of view from one space into the other, outdoor into indoors, so people see activity when they come to town. And there's an opportunity for fresh air and breezes, especially with our very nice weather that we have here in the summertime, fall and spring as well. We were talking about relocating the mural, and we've been in conversation for a good while with the folks in the mural committee, thinking we're really close to a resolution. Just spoke with Bob Eschbach, who indicated that the artist for the First National Bank murals also looked at this mural, the Lincoln Douglas mural, and determined that it was in reasonably good shape and could be relocated safely. And so we proposed a location on the 3rd story of the Carson building, and you can only really see that view when you're, you can best see that view, I should say, when you're at the park, because then you can see the full mural overlooking the park from the place where it makes most sense for the event. So that's a real possibility. I'm hoping we'll get some clarity from that soon. We were real strong believers in public art. That's what all of this is about too. It's about public attractions, public art, and this would be a way of continuing the lifespan of that artwork. We would use the Woolworth building for an expanded brewery operations for Tender Roots Brewing, which is a business that's growing in the back of the the Lone Buffalo and the back of house, Lone Buffalo, back of house in the Carson building. Right now we have to do portable canning, and we'd like to have a permanent canning facility for Tangled Roots, and we'd also like to have expanded cooling area for distribution. And that would take place, the latter part, that would take place in the Woolworth building. And that's something we'd like to finish this year. We'd also like to get started with the expanded restaurant feet for the beer hall, and that could accommodate probably about 300 people, 350 people at banquet seating. So a real possible private event space, but also opens to the public for an expansion of events on the square. So you could have a farmer's market indoors. You could have the Chris Kringle market expand. You could have new events that need some shelter in the area, in the building itself. We expect it as a building that will be operated open most of the time, but also especially for private events in the evening times, and for weddings, events, and things like that, some concerts as well. So that's where we are, and so we're anxious to hear from you and your thoughts are, and open to questions you might have.
Can we bring more traffic, more visitors, more people who spend money in the city into the city? This is what it's about, and I think an attraction like this combination of this building plus connection to the park I would say would be a big competition to Utica, which is always packed every weekend when they close their street. But this is just much higher level, higher quality, I would say, than Utica is. I could see that this is busy than even in the off season from 6 o'clock in the morning when the first people show up and have a cup of coffee and until late evening, they drink their last beer and sit outside. Everybody wants to sit outside. We see the success of the music in the park. Every time I drive by, it's full, right? So people want to sit outside. We see this everywhere in so many other cities, as you know. And I think this is a good opportunity to do that. Very beneficial from a tax revenue point of view. If you look at it just narrow on this one thing, besides the attraction.
Are there any questions from council?
Yeah, I'm going to start out first. This is nothing unusual. As far as, okay, basically from the last time I heard this, okay, we're looking at going from having stores in there to having like a banquet hall. Am I correct? Is that what we're looking at? As far as the one end, not where the bar is, not where the cooking is, and, sandwich or whatever, right that one area. But the other end, which would be the west end, would be more like a banquet hall for like weddings and stuff like that.
It's also a beer hall. So a beer hall is where it's kind of like an expansion of a tap room, a much larger space. So you have a bar in there, you have bar service in there. But you have this idea of the ability to have kind of this pavilion in the park. So just as people come into town, you see all this activity happening in the corner. So it's not meant to be just an event space or just a banquet space. It is that, but it's also a beer hall.
It would be
If you want to stand up.
it would be a space which is open daily.
On the internet,
It would be a space which is open daily, not just for special events. In the morning.
I'm looking at, okay, you have 4 doors that are going to open up towards the north, okay?
Yeah.
Now, if we're doing music in the park on Saturday night from 6 to 8, when the doors are open, are there going to be bands playing in there for a wedding and stuff like that?
No, we're good neighbors, so I don't think that'd be a problem. No, I think one thing feeds off the other. So if there's a musical event going on in the park, I just think that gives people a longer reason to stay and listen to the music and stay afterwards and spend some money and enjoy themselves too.
Any questions from council at this point? Any comments from the community?
Got a couple of questions.
Microphone. Sorry.
No, I know it is.
For the Woolworth building portion of the project, what kind of investment is Tango Roost or Seal Realty looking at, and what kind of job creation do you expect?
I have an idea. I'll give you a rough number for the answer to Dave Noble's question on the investment. I'm thinking it would probably be, in addition to what we've already spent on getting the building ready for development, in addition to, so an additional development, probably around $2 million for building improvements and the FF&E. So there's a new kitchen going in, obviously that's a few $100,000. There's new brewery facilities, that's another few $100,000, and there's building costs associated with those things. We'll also be putting in air conditioning and bathrooms for a large space. So plus finishing out the interiors and the garage doors. So all that is probably roughly around $2 million. I don't have the budget numbers in front of me.
Well, this can be done without basically closing the street.
Can it be done without the city closing the street?
Permanently.
I think it should be, yes. It could be possibly done. I mean, we like the idea of being able to have as much indoor and outdoor connection as possible. So sidewalk improvements are absolutely essential.
I understand that point.
And the streetscape improvements, really highly desirable. You know, the street needs shade. It's got shade on one side, and the shade always only goes to the north. And so there's no shade really on the street. So that would be beneficial. Those kinds of things would really be helpful. I mean, I think for it to have its greatest success, a lot of the elements that have been shown and that the community wants to see, you know, when it's feasible, right, would be a great way to aim towards. So things we do now, we want to integrate into a kind of an overall master plan, so that the city's investment is well spent and nothing's being undone. It's just recently redone.
What's the overall timeline, do you think?
Well, we're ready to get started. We do have permitting. We had a little bit of a roadblock with the permitting last year. We actually ended up withdrawing our permit. And it was mostly around the art of this thing. And so hopefully that will solve soon and will allow us to move forward. And be in a very happy and congenial and cooperative way. So that's what we expect and hope for.
What do you expect out of the city, and how fast do you expect it?
Well, I'm not in the business of telling people how this is done.
Well, no, I understand that, but I noticed that this stuff was not working, unless we have to do a lot of work on the street.
Well, we can
Flow it into the park. I
Well,
understand.
we won't be able to do this overnight. We have construction to do, and so, and then permitting to do as well, and then we have to make sure that the mural is, if we come to a conclusion on that, is safely relocated. So there's these things, but as soon as that happens, we're ready to start. And we probably have about, you know, depending upon lead times, 3 to 6 months of construction. That's what we're looking at for that. Some of these things we really want to open by year end. That's mostly on the back of house side, so that we can get those things rolling. On the public side, I think it would be in everyone's best interest to have this in great working, functioning order by next spring, so we can open up for, you know, the summertime, or the big tourist season, and have a big splash. But I mean, I'm not saying that. That doesn't mean if it's not done by that time I turned it off. Did do that on purpose.
Dave couldn't hear you.
Yeah, you know, as long as things are in progress, you know, we understand things take time. We all have to be patient and cooperate with one another in that regard. You know, I'm sure we can work something out. We all went through COVID together, and we all made do, right? And we all did okay. Most of us.
The question is more of the details down the road, but when you mentioned it being more of a public space when it's not being reserved out or rented for an event or something of that nature, the beer garden aspect of it that's right out open to the park. You just said renovations including bathrooms, and so I'm curious as to how public of a space are you meaning?
Well, I knew this question was coming.
Because you know, one of the requests that we get all the time is more public bathrooms in our downtown area. Currently, the 807 building is the de facto public bathroom. What is your That, obviously, that's a business idea for down the road, but just briefly, when you knew it was coming up, so what's your thoughts on it?
Well, I think that's one of those things that has to be managed properly, because you don't want to become the restroom for everyone every day. I think it is good, because like we talked about, there's events on Jackson Plaza in the park. We want them to come into our building. And we're probably not gonna be policing them too carefully to see, who bought a beer on the way in, or if they're on the way out. We hope our product is good enough, they'll do that, and want to spend time there. And I think by and large, that'll happen. At the same time, you just don't want anyone off the street, using the restrooms, or you can become like a Starbucks employee. So, we don't want that, but there's a good happy medium in there, and I think that, and I probably shouldn't have said that, but, nonetheless, I think public use of it is probably feasible, because I think the whole idea is events in the park, events in the square are good for business everywhere else. And so if we can help facilitate that with, restrooms, I'm sure.
Well, I'm looking at basically like when we have music in the park sometimes, you people would rather not use porta potties, et cetera. Not saying they wouldn't buy a beer and carry it across the street, because that's not for me to look at, but that's just a thought there, if you got people coming across to use the restroom, sometimes we need, the band members to go in and change clothes real quick, to the restroom, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, sure, absolutely. Has the city contemplated a social district?
Was that?
A social district, where you can take your beer and walk across the street.
In a roundabout way.
In a roundabout way, we do have that, yes.
Yeah.
I think it extends from, Lafayette Street down to Jordan Block.